Join us as we sit down with Brandy Baker, a seasoned real estate agent from Southeastern Michigan. Brandy is also a passionate shark enthusiast and recently embraced the joys of being a dog mom. In this episode, Brandy shares her inspiring journey from her remarkable strides in real estate to her triumphs in sobriety and her newfound role as an adoptive dog parent, showcasing her resilience and determination. Discover the unexpected joys Brandy has found through her fulfilling volunteer work at an animal shelter, advocating for dog fostering, and ultimately welcoming Levi, her beloved pup, into her life. Through candid reflections, Brandy sheds light on how her sobriety journey intertwines with her real estate career, the invaluable support systems that support her, and the profound comfort her furry companion Levi provides during life's most challenging moments. As our conversation unfolds, we explore the profound link between real estate and pet well-being, delving into the pressing issue of limited pet-friendly housing options and the potential impact of legislation, such as California's proposed bill aimed at expanding these opportunities by curbing blanket pet bans in rentals. Drawing from her wealth of experiences, Brandy offers invaluable advice for those navigating similar paths, whether in real estate, volunteering with animal shelters, embracing pet fostering and adoption, or embarking on a sobriety journey. Her insights offer helpful guidance for navigating complex life journeys. Additionally, we delve into practical considerations for promoting a pet-friendly environment, ensuring your pet's safety, and much more. Tune in for an insightful discussion celebrating the intersection of passion, purpose, and perseverance in personal and professional realms. Hello, and thanks so much for joining. I'm very excited that Brandy Baker, professional real estate agent in Southeastern Michigan, shark enthusiast, and a new dog mom, joins us today. Welcome, Brandy. Thanks so much for joining.
Thank you, Erin. Thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be on with you.
I'm excited too. To kick off our conversation, can you share with us the journey that led you into real estate? What aspects of your work bring you the most fulfillment? And what are you most excited about for this year?
So I got started in real estate. My dad used to own some homes back in the day and had me do his paperwork, was where I developed my love of paperwork. And I just always thought it was pretty neat to own houses, have some sort of passive income. And I understood that at an early age, what that was doing for us. He did have some trouble with tenants where he would have to put them out. And I remember thinking, like, I don't know, that's rough. But some years later, it was my turn to buy my house. And the vibe that I got, so I was pre-approved for a low amount. And before I got pre-approved, like when I was online looking at houses, so many realtors were calling. Everybody was super excited, wanted to talk to me. When I finally got my pre-approval, there was an obvious shift in the desire to work with me. It was under, just be straight, it was under 100,000. And at that time, actually, this was, I bought my house in 2019. I think I got pre-approved in 2018. It was doable to buy a house under $100,000. May not be so much these days, but I could feel that shift in people who want to work with me. And when I closed on the house, I'm not going to say that my realtor didn't do a great job. I'm just going to say that he wasn't clear about what the steps were that we were taking. So I never knew where we were in the process. I actually didn't know anything about the process. And when we were done, I was like, oh, I could do real estate. It didn't seem like it was too hard. And during COVID, there was a time where I was going to take a vacation and we couldn't travel. And so I had already planned a week off of work. And a friend at the time was like, I said, hey, why don't we take that real estate course? They agreed. I took it, passed the exam the first try, and like flew off into it. Business was always wonderful because I think I'm a people person at heart. So I've been in the customer service industry for most of my adult life, and real estate was just a natural kind of like shift. The thing that brings me the most fulfillment is to walk people through that process that I had no idea what I was doing. And it doesn't matter if like you're a first time home buyer or you have owned homes previously but haven't bought in the last 5 years. there's something that you don't know. For sure, there's something that you're unaware of. I really like negotiating for my clients. That's a lot of fun to just see how good of a deal can we get here, or to be honest with them and tell them in this market, it's in a multiple offer situation, I wouldn't mess around if you really want this house. And you get to learn a lot about people and their families and their lives and their desires as you go through the process of getting them into a home. So I've really enjoyed that. This year, I'm most excited about the fact that the market's going to pick up. The interest rates are going to go down a little bit. I'm hoping it's not going to be what 2020 was like, where it was driving the house prices way too high. Because once they get settled there without some sort of reduction, as in a huge increase in interest rates, it's going to be hard for any first time home buyer to buy. And I don't want that. But I'm excited to see where it's going to take us. I have a feeling the house prices will go up slightly just because that's the nature of lowering the interest rate. But I just like to walk people through it and talk to them and make sure that they feel good about what they're doing. So I've had clients buy at over $500,000 and I've had clients buy under $100,000. I treat them all the same because I feel like everybody should just be given respect and shown a desire to work with regardless of the price point. Because if you're worried about taking on like clients who have a lower purchase price, maybe have friends. They'll refer you, they'll remember you. And even if you don't get business from them until 3 years later, it's just how much money do you really need? I'm good where I'm at. So, yeah, that's what I'm excited about.
There's so much to what you just said. I want to try to highlight a few things that I'm hearing as key takeaways. So please let me know if I'm missing anything. If I'm hearing you right, part of what's fulfilling about the work for you is that you not only knew at a young age the benefits that you and your family were experiencing from home ownership, but also in going through that journey for yourself in buying your first home, you recognize that this was not only a learning process, but there were aspects to the process that you learned along the way, it sounds like, from your own self guided journey, from taking on and getting certified in real estate after that period. And you have an opportunity to help others better understand that process and guide them through it in a way that you learned by doing and are able to ease from your clients' perspectives. Am I hearing that right in terms of both the importance of real estate from a young age and also learning from your own experience home buying?
Oh, absolutely. And I think you touched on a point that like I really want to circle back to is I've always wanted a job or a career where I could help people. And I'm not a doctor. That's not my science is not my jam. I always I was just trying to find the way. And customer service, yeah, maybe. I was in the restaurant industry. So I don't think that was where that wasn't my best possible use of my time. But then when I found real estate, it was, yeah, now you get to help all these people. And a lot of people think they can't ever own a home. Even right now with the housing prices the way they are, there's tons of programs around it. But people still think, no, won't be me. I'll just rent for the rest of my life. And I feel for them. There's so many benefits that owning your own home from gaining equity because you've owned a home. So gaining equity and having a place that's yours and not having to worry about as long as you're making your payments or it's paid off, not having to worry about somebody coming to snatch it up. And there's an ease of mind when you're in your own space. So yeah, you'd be accurate to say that.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing those experiences. And I would say we're going to talk a little bit about the pet parenting and pet ownership sides, but certainly benefits to home ownership from that lens as well. I'm excited to delve into that topic soon. When it comes to your points around advice for other realtors and also your own experiences, I want to circle back on one other thing that you mentioned that I imagine may be something that you find really an important part of your role and that may vary depending on others' preferences and how they see their own roles. And that's the part of negotiation in the home buying process. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Because I imagine for some, and I think your point is very accurate that for those of us not working in real estate, we may understand parts of the process, but we don't necessarily ever fully understand all the nuances to the process of buying and selling a home, even if we've gone through it. What is the importance of negotiation in that process? And how do you see the value that you're adding to your clients as being a negotiator?
Sure. Negotiating for clients is literally I think if you don't like negotiating, you probably don't like real estate. It's so much fun because you get to really so I've met my client, I've met with them. We went to see houses. I know what's important. I'm listening while they are walking through the homes and finding out. I have a preliminary idea of what they want, but getting them in a house and watching them walk through it and like they love this about it or that, they want a big yard. All the things that are important, you really find out when you're looking. So when you go back to putting an offer in, it's just a exciting game of what can I save them or what can I do for them, but I'm fighting on their behalf. And as much as I'm gonna keep it copacetic between me and the listing agent, but whatever the listing agent's client wants is not or if I'm on the list side, whatever the other side wants is not my, like, MO. It's not, like, at the top of my list of things to worry about. So I wanna get my client the absolute best deal so that they feel good about it, and I know a lot about their finances at that point, so I know where we need to go for that deal to make the most sense to them. And to me, it's really important not to leave money on the table, and what that just means is if there's an opportunity to save your client some cash, go for it. Really, the worst that can happen is that the other side says no and then just doesn't take your deal. You know what I mean? And you can always go back to your client and say, "Okay, look, they said a solid no. Do you still wanna move forward?" In multiple offer situations too, because so I came in during COVID where everything I didn't know that I felt like when I bought my house, there were no other offers on it. Maybe I think he might have said there was interest, but there weren't any other offers on it. In COVID, almost every house we put an offer on was multiple offer situation. I had a couple, an older couple were buying their first home for the first time at 74 and 75. Yeah. And they went through they bought the 8th house, they got the 8th offer accepted.
Wow.
So, it's just, like, you gotta have the energy to put in the work. You also have to train ahead of time. So, role playing, negotiating in just, like, different aspects of your life just for fun. Sometimes I play around with Ethan and see what I can get so that when I'm going into the actual on the battlefield for my clients, I know exactly what to say.
Just so our listeners are aware, you're referring to essentially role playing negotiations with your fiance partner to
Yeah.
prep for your
Getting the
clients. Yeah.
Mhm,
Wonderful. Wonderful.
mhm.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I think it's an important point. We may not always think about the important role of negotiations when we're thinking about the home buying or selling process. So to switch gears a little bit, what inspired you to start volunteering in an animal shelter, advocating for dog fostering, and ultimately adopting a pup of your own into your life?
So I've always been a huge fan of animals, love them to death. I've been a vegetarian for quite some time now. I had a little slip, but in general, probably I think maybe 9 years now. And what started it was I was trying to find a way because being a real estate agent, like I can't work, my brain can't just be real estate all the time. It may get boring, maybe, I don't know. But I was looking for an avenue of something I could do to help and attach my business to that I don't know how to describe it, but lead people and, "Hey, I'm a realtor, but also I have interests outside of real estate," but make sure that, like, those 2 things could be pretty cohesive
Mhm.
and like, when I'm trying to make marketing material, I guess I would say. And I just thought, "Okay, what do they do?" I had a friend who volunteered at a dog shelter. She had talked about it for at least, like, 5 years I had known her. And I was like, "Why have I never thought of doing that?" I'd been so busy with my previous job as a restaurant manager, there was no way that I could just make "Oh, this day I'm always gonna go do this at the shelter."
Mhm.
But as a realtor, I can make my hours and, like, plan around that.
Mhm.
So I said, "Okay, let me try this out." And it was just so fulfilling. You go, you get to walk dogs, you get to really get to give out a lot of treats, which is always my favorite. If you ask my friends from high school who had pets, I definitely had a problem giving their pets treats because I just think they're so happy. They get so excited when they hear the crunch of the bag.
Mhm.
But yeah, you get to just hang out with dogs all weekend. Also, if anybody's ever been to a kennel or a shelter that's listening, obviously they're not like they don't seem the happiest place. They're in a kennel, they're not getting out and moving around often enough. And even when we would go, so Ethan also volunteers. When we would go, maybe each of us could walk like 2 or 3 dogs, trying to hit 4, and that right there takes about 2 hours.
Mhm.
Because you want 'em to have a good exercise, and then if there's 20 dogs in the shelter, imagine having to walk past, and you're just like, "Oh gosh, I'm so sorry." But it just fell into it. I liked animals. This was the easiest way to get access to them and help them in a real way. And then so we quickly decided I've never wanted a pet because of my work hours and then Ethan's work hours.
Mhm.
Ethan has had pets. I have never. I had a cat for a little while once, but I was allergic. So we had to give him away. But I never wanted it. I don't wanna be a bad pet parent. So if I can't walk him and take him out and see him and play with him, I think it's doing the dog a disservice, any animal a disservice. So we fostered instead, which would be easier, and we didn't really even foster, we would just take a dog home on a weekend, let him stay with us, and then we take him or her back to the shelter. But that part was like even just that was hard because the dog's all free to run around, the backyard's fenced in. They're having a great time. They've driving in the car, and then you have to take them back, and then you put them in their little shed, and then they're just, like, looking at you, and you're like, "Alright, no, I'll see you next time." It's just really hard. How I got Levi was we fostered him. The people who were currently fostering him were going out of town, were looking for somebody to watch him for that weekend, and I said, I'm like, "Yeah, whatever, that's fine." I think it was, like, maybe, like, a long weekend, Thursday to a Monday or something, and he was really chill. We always had the kennel, like the cage, so if we're not at home because I don't know. Also, our house was not dog approved because we didn't have them all the time. So if we're not there, we'd like them in the kennel. And I could see him on the camera. He doesn't do much. And then when we were home, he didn't do much. He doesn't bark. He was just so calm and like chill. Except if you're gonna walk him though, he pogos, which is great. But when it was time, Ethan to give him back, Ethan really wanted to keep him. So we had a very, like, stern, hard conversation of, "If we decide to keep him, you must understand, this is a whole soul you are taking on. This is not the dog was fun for a couple of weeks, and now we're just gonna figure something else out. We got a plan, we gotta walk him. He needs a bed. He's gotta have food, he's gotta go to the vet," like, all these things. And Ethan was like, "Oh, I've had dogs. I'm good with that." And I'm like, "If you say so, I don't know." It wasn't my jam because in my mind, I could just imagine how much that's gonna affect our lives and our schedules. But Ethan was down. And we have a home, we have a fenced in yard. If I can give the dog a good life, why not give him the opportunity? And so we decided we would foster him. Ethan decided we would adopt him. I thought we were on the same page, we were not. So Ethan went and he signed all the paperwork and adopted him, and I'm thinking, like, we're fostering Levi and just keeping him to see if somebody in case anybody else wants him, we can take him off these people's hands for now, but like I said, it's really hard anybody who has a pet, I'm sure it's so hard to take them and then just say, "Ah, never mind. Nah, we're good now." He was here for 2 weeks. When he was here, like, after the first 2 weeks, he got comfortable-ish. I was comfortable, we had a system. I didn't wanna give him away, and then I was like, "Okay, I think I'm ready to adopt him." And Ethan was like, "Oh, yeah, no, I did. Here's the folder I've had it for however long." And I was like, "What?" So, whatever. It's more vacuuming, there's more sweeping. We don't have carpet, so that's fine, but you just I don't know. It's very good for your mental health. That Levi makes sure I'm outside at least once a day for a minimum of 30 minutes, moving around outside, like, at least, even in the snow. He that There's a guarantee that I'm gonna be doing that 7 days a week. I don't even work out 7 days a week. So, kudos, Levi, good for you.
I wanna circle back on several things that you mentioned. First, I really appreciate that you're talking about the positives and the challenges that can go with both fostering and adopting. 'Cause I think we always wanna have a realistic sense of what that looks like before we're volunteering or taking on an animal, and I absolutely agree that it is essential to be committed to if we're going to go the adoption route, recognizing that there is a transition period, right? It can take dogs even a few months to get acclimated, especially depending on what kind of history they have had previously. And that we really want to be entering that process with the long term in mind, which by many references is 15 years, depending on the age of the dog. I really appreciate everything that you're sharing there. When it comes to fostering, it sounds like you were seeing some of those benefits to the physical health there too, in terms of with the opportunity to get out there, walk the dogs, certainly seeing the immediate benefits that they get from that enrichment. Because as you mentioned, shelters do tremendously important work and that environment can be challenging for dogs, right? And we don't always have the same number of volunteers as the number of dogs that have needs for walks and engagement. And any volunteer, any fostering, any dog walking helps, right? So even if we can't walk all the dogs, being able to help some makes a tremendous impact. So really appreciate everything that you're sharing. And that can be challenging on us as humans and that we need to be prepared for that in terms of recognizing the role and what we are able to do in that amount of time that we have. I also really appreciate that you're talking about the benefits you've gotten from real estate in switching and having that additional flexibility and that ability to build in the time. And certainly in terms of taking on Levi full time. If I'm hearing you right, I'm interpreting your comments about Ethan's choice to adopt as recognizing that he knows you so well as his partner and fiance that he knew that you were on board with a long term decision, just hadn't had that conversation yet. And that in general, you would support partners chatting about that before going the adoption route. Am I hearing that right?
I would support a very clear and concise conversation with a word at the end of saying, yes, we are like a sentence, make a statement. Yes, we are going to foster this dog for X amount of days.
Mm.
But no, you're not wrong. Ethan did know. I think he knew there's no way I'm going to give him up now.
Mhm,
I'll tell you a quick story, but Levi got out one night.
mhm,
He got out the first day we had him. The first day we fostered him, we didn't close the gate and he just was out. But he was new to the neighborhood. He was down the street. And it was almost like we came out of the fence and he was like, "Hey, oh, are we walking?" And I was like, "Get back here." So that was like, "Oh no." We almost lost the dog. Like he wasn't gone. He was out for a solid maybe 2 minutes by himself. Never thought about it again. But he actually got out, like past the fence, and we've had Levi since June of last year, like end of June, and he was gone. Like we couldn't find him. He's not a big fan of his collar. He is microchipped, which if anyone's listening, or for those of you who are listening, I thought a microchip was a GPS. It is not. So I never thought if he didn't have his collar on, I wasn't worried about him because I was like, no, surely we'll be able to track him. And no, it's not. He has to be taken to a vet for someone to scan him, or I think some police stations have the ability to scan. But he was gone. He had no collar on. Levi is in my opinion, a medium-sized dog. Most people see him as a large dog. He's a Catahoula leopard hound. So he's got these like piercing blue eyes and a long kind of snout. He's intimidating. He's a sweetheart. He's never even came close to biting any of us. But if he approached me and I didn't know him, I too would be nervous. I'd be like, "Whoa." And a dog with no collar, he's solid. He's all muscle and he's ripped. You can see it. He was out, he was gone. And we were all over the neighborhood. I have the best neighbors, by the way. Like, I posted it, Ethan and I were driving around for about an hour as I was posting it, and then my neighbors were immediately up and out, driving themselves. We were all over our neighborhood, and, yeah, we couldn't find him. Luckily, this angel named Sarah, who dropped from heaven with her dog, found him. He was, funny enough, at a liquor store, and these guys were like, she was coming out of it, and these guys said to her, these she was like, they were big guys and they seemed really scared of him. They were like, "Is that your dog?" She was like, "No, he's just a dog that's outside." But she said he was super clean, so she didn't think he was a stray, and she opened her door and he got in the car. Levi slept at her house with her dog. His name's Luca, her dog. Had a sleepover, thought he had a great time with his new friend. He loves other dogs. And she called the animal control in the morning because it was pretty late at night. She called him in the morning. They were like, "Oh, yeah, this woman has been calling about this dog all night." So they linked us up. I went to pick up Levi. You would have thought there was nothing wrong in his world. He literally thought he made a friend, had a sleepover, and I was just coming to take him for a walk. And meanwhile, we had been crying all night, like in search of him. So you quickly get attached. And I didn't think I would be. I My entire life I've never had a pet, I've always thought like they're just animals. I really like animals, but they are just animals. And no, I would have paid almost any amount of money to have him back. I was running up to piles of snow. He's white, by the way. I was running up to piles of snow because it was so dark at that night. And I was just like calling his name, and then it would just be a pile of snow with a little dirt on it. I would not recommend losing a pup. It's not for the faint of heart. He does wear a collar now with his air tag because I just don't care if he doesn't like it. It has to be.
Thank you so much for sharing that and sharing your experiences both early on and certainly in terms of lessons learned through that process. I want to highlight a few things that you mentioned because I think so often, whether we're first time pet parents or whether we have had pets for a long time, until we experience a scare like what you had, we may not recognize the nuances of some of the technologies, as you mentioned, when it comes to microchipping, some of the factors in terms of the environment, and just recognizing that every animal is an individual, right? And even if we had a dog in the past that did not test the boundaries of the outdoor environment, that we may have a totally different situation with our animal now. Your point about microchipping is incredibly important. So when it comes to microchipping, especially from an adoption perspective, we may hear that all animals are microchipped and have a perception of what that means. So thank you for clarifying that microchipping is a very important step. However, it is not a failsafe, right? When we're talking about an animal that is loose or out of our line of sight, and how that works is tremendously important and does depend on other technology. So I love your point about the air tags. I think the point about collars, harnesses, identification is really important. Making sure that contact information is part of that identification and always having your documentation available for your animal is another thing I tend to highlight, especially when traveling, because we can find that animals easily get separated, whether we're talking about car trips, whether we're talking about just being in parks and other spaces. So having a photo of your dog readily available in case you get separated, having the rabies vaccination documentation, anything that essentially is going to be needed in that process to both help find your dog and help show he or she is yours, as well as the health status is essential as well. And thank you for sharing your reflection in terms of how important he is to you. I think we we benefit so much by hearing others talk about the love of their animals, and I absolutely agree. Anytime there was a health scare with any of my animals, it's a tremendously eye-opening experience to recognize in that moment how important they are to you. And I'm so glad to hear that he was returned safely to you and you had this angel looking out for you. And recognizing that the teams involved provided him such a safe space that he was very comfortable in that is wonderful. And not all animals get to experience that if they end up outside the home. So I think your point about fencing is really important. Oftentimes we'll see that as a key question when adopting an animal. Do you have a fence? What does that look like in your environment? And much of that has to do with protecting the animal within its designated space and also providing that space to run around. So really appreciate everything that you've shared in terms of your exercise practices and getting out for walks. These things are so important to dog care. You've talked a little bit about the benefits you've experienced throughout caring for Levi. I'd love to take things up a level. You mentioned in the beginning that part of what you were exploring when you thought about volunteering was where are there opportunities to connect to the work that you're doing in real estate and how might those things come together? I'm curious in terms of your advocacy for dog fostering and your own experience fostering. Um, I imagine that must be tremendously rewarding to see dogs placed in homes, whether for a fostering experience or full time. Can you talk a little bit about the emotional impact of seeing a foster dog find their forever home and or a foster environment that's benefiting them and how this parallels your experiences in the real estate industry?
Watching a dog find a foster home or a forever home, because I'm really down for forever homes. But having anyone to take one out of the shelter and just watch them having the ability to like lay on a bed or a carpet and just sprawl out with like love and affection, it's it warms the heart. I could shed a tear over it. You can't get there's just not enough of that. Like, I can't get enough of watching dogs and cats because the shelter it's I Heart Dogs and Warren. They have cats as well. Just dogs need that love and affection. So when there's one going to a home and now everyone in there can shower them, it's just so satisfying. It's so gratifying. When I have been working with clients, when I'm out showing houses or they say, "Oh, this is the house I love it. I want to put an offer on it." I immediately take note if it's already fenced in because my next step is going to be if they already have a pet, I might say, "Will you get another?" If they don't though, I'm always an advocate of saying, like, dogs are a deterrent for typical, like, criminal activity. So, if you were just wanting to make sure especially if it's, because 'cause I've worked with, like, single moms, if you're gonna be living here by yourself, just get have a dog. If not for if you even if it's a little, like, chihuahua, if nothing, it's an alarm system because they're not just gonna let somebody come in the house. And it is so much easier to because I know the shelter and I know the dogs, I can say, "Oh, there's this great dog, he's good with kids. There's this other dog who's, like, super strong, her name's Willa." It just you can easily, like, shift into that, and I've had clients go and visit the shelter and find their dogs and just be so happy, and then I get to visit the dogs that I walked, and I don't know, it's very satisfying. I can tell that it brings them a sense of peace. Obviously, the dog is benefiting. What I reflect on is no matter how many dogs we get adopted out, once that spot opens up, there's another dog in that kennel. You know what I mean? There's so many. But now the dogs are neutered or spayed from this shelter, and I think most shelters do. So that's a benefit of having a dog in a shelter because they'll take care of that. And then we hopefully can cut down on the epidemic of having so many loose animals on the streets. But emotionally, to see a dog that happy after watching them kinda pace or just sit for a month or 2, it's very satisfying. I'm very appreciative of what I get to do as an agent, and then, like, my network, including this shelter into my network is just wonderful.
I love that. And I imagine the shelter is benefiting tremendously from those connections. And certainly, as you mentioned, there are so many benefits to your clients. We experience such a boost in our own wellness from caring for animals. So thank you so much for sharing that. You touched on something really important when you mentioned that there is an immediate filling of that spot in a shelter as soon as an animal is placed in a home, that we have a tremendous need for animal adoption, including and beyond dogs as well. And when we think about the broader space and the challenges and opportunities when it comes to animal adoption, there's a strong connection between real estate and pet wellness, since we know that housing issues and lack of available pet friendly housing are typically among the most common reasons why pets end up relinquished to animal shelters. So we flagged this from the beginning that we would get here. I certainly would love to talk about this a bit and recognizing that home ownership potential solution to being able to have that pet friendly option. Also, want to talk a little bit about the rental side of the equation that you mentioned from your early experiences and reflections. California is currently exploring one potential solution from the rental side through a proposed bill that would prohibit landlords from blanket bans of pets in rentals. And so, under this bill, landlords could only ask about pet ownership after a tenant application had already been approved. So, as someone who is deeply involved in real estate as well as animal welfare, and who helps place dogs in homes that often face breed restrictions, what are your thoughts on this proposed bill in California aimed at increasing pet friendly housing options?
Oh, I love it. I would like this to just be a universal bill. Let's enact it now and then start passing it in every other state. The thing is, when you're looking for a rental, yes, there's these restrictions. They don't want big dogs. They want small dogs are okay. There's tons of reasons why the landlord will justify. And I'm not saying that the landlord's wrong in what they're asking for. So if you have hardwood floors, any animal with nails is going to potentially scratch a floor. Cats, their urine has ammonia, so if they pee on anything, it's really hard to get out. So the landlord is trying to protect their property, right? However, renting is often much more affordable in our current economy than it would be to buy the house right now. So either you can afford a rent and your rent is going to be higher than a mortgage in most cases. So 90% of cases, your rent is going to be higher than what your mortgage would be. But then also in those same cases, a lot of people don't have that money saved up for the down payment and closing costs that it would take to buy the house. So you're in this purgatory of what do I do? I have to have some place to stay. And when someone comes to me and says, I want to get a house, I have a cane corso. And I'm like, that is terrible. If there were a way to approve them based on their financials and their income and their credit score like that, if we left it at that alone, and then you could not ask about the pet until after the fact, you would find out very quickly how many people are just prejudiced against the animals coming in. And I have hardwood floors. We have hardwood floors throughout the entire house. And of course, I was worried about that when we started just fostering because the dogs at the shelter aren't always the cleanest or what most well groomed. So they may not have their nails filed. And I thought about that, about it may potentially scratching the floor. And in a grand scheme of things, it's an animal who has a house now. I don't think that if he does scratch the floor, it's not gonna be the end of my world. You know what I mean? Like, my shoes too would scratch the floor. My furniture would scratch the floor. And my furniture and my shoes are inanimate objects that I don't have as much love and affection for as I do the pet that I have. Also, there's quick fixes to things like that, and just so that everyone's aware, a dog's nails do not damage a floor as much as you think they do. Whatever you're imagining, stop it. We've had Levi for, almost, a year would be June, so whatever months however many months that is. We've had Levi for a while. He has not scratched the floor. We're fine. So get it out of your head. But no, I love this bill. I think it would be great. I think it would be and then if there's a fee, and I think it should be a minimal fee. There's a fee to have a pet after the fact. Okay, that's reasonable. It should be more of a cleaning fee than anything else because but their landlords are charging that anyway. I just don't know how much more we're gonna milk the consumer for a place to stay. Yeah, I have a gentleman that's selling a series of his properties right now. He's owned these properties for many years, and he's had tenants paying in them, and he had his rents at such an affordable rate. Things I haven't seen for at least 5 years. Like, one of his tenants was paying $800 a month. It's a 3-bedroom, 2 full bath house, like, brick, and they're just great tenants. They pay him all the time, and so he never upped their rent. That's what I need that. I need those guys back because it's just not realistic to continue to raise the price of housing with no end in sight. And this whole part about when someone tells me they have a pet, I automatically know we are gonna have a much more difficult time to get you in a home because we need to disclose that. ESA animals are great. If you are in need of an emotional support animal and you can have your doctor certify that in a letter, and landlords cannot deny an emotional support animal. It's not a pet. It is actually like a medically required unit. So that is one way around that. If and I can tell you, I don't have it certified, but Levi is definitely our emotional support animal. We lean on him hard on tough days.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I absolutely agree. And as someone that who had a large dog in my care, medium to large dog in my care for a long time and navigated the nail situation, has navigated being someone that rents out a property as well. I absolutely agree with your point that the nails are, first of all, not the thing that has caused damage. In my experience, the shoes we wear, the furniture we use, right? So there's
Furniture is so
a-
much heavier. I have buffers on all the bottoms of them
yeah.
because when I was moving everything when we moved in, that n leave there's not a nail scratch in this floor.
Mhm. Mhm. I definitely hear you. And I really appreciate your point about remembering that we're creating a space for a living being and one that can be a major factor for people in terms of their ability to find a housing solution that works for them in their price point, in the geography they need, and with a member of their family. The vast majority of Americans consider animals, they're part of the family. Pets are family. And I really appreciate everything that you're sharing. I certainly echo your points in terms of advice for those that are in a position to create that opportunity to, number one, recognize that the concerns are often not even a factor. And if they are, they're easily managed with cleaning, and that the benefits truly outweigh any potential concern from a wear and tear perspective. So, really appreciate everything that you're sharing. And when it comes to this particular bill, I'm curious to see how this progresses and absolutely agree. Would love to see this emulated in all states. This is a tremendous need and it supports people and animals in huge ways that are absolutely needed. So thank you so much for speaking to that. When you think about next steps, how do you believe we can further expand the availability of pet friendly housing, recognizing the housing challenges that we just walked through that many pet owners face?
So, obviously, with bills like this, that would be ideal. I would like to lean on the humanity of people, and if it's almost like where if you've never worked in the service industry, then you just don't know how to be a good customer because you've not experienced the person complaining about fries and how it's ruined their entire life, and you're like, "I could just get you more fries." It's if you've never owned a pet or if you don't have that affinity for animals, it's hard to get you to understand why this is such a silly requirement. And then there's always gonna be a bad apple that spoils the bunch, right? There have certainly been more situations that have been expressed because the negative is always easier for people to go out and shout about and post about. The negative about having pets in a home that's a rental are always talked about, whereas the positives are like, "Oh, yeah, I'm so happy that I just don't now go and post about all my happy moods." So this post here, I'm telling you guys right now, I've had a dog for this long and there's not been any I've done more damage to the house than the dog has. Ethan has spilled more things than Levi has ever knocked over. And if you've never been open-minded to that, then you will start to you just lean into what you've heard of, "No, pets will damage property." No, they won't. They'll dig in the yard, but it's outside. Are you mad at the squirrels too? I would just be open-minded, but without regulatory measures from government, unfortunately, it seems as though people are not willing to just allow things to be. There are fewer people out there that are just giving me great vibe landlords, essentially, that are giving me great vibes of, "I'm gonna take a chance and let this person" with a security you have a security deposit. If that makes any difference to anybody that's listening, you've given the landlord, "Hey, landlord, Mr. Landlord, Mrs. Landlord, you have a security deposit. If there really is that much damage, you'll keep the security deposit, and you'll fix the problem when they're gone." I can assure you there won't be. In most cases, there just won't be. And I don't know. I'd hate to just beat it to a pulp, but they just don't do the amount of damage that is attributed to them. Kids do more damage than pets do. Kids will tear a cabinet door off the cabinet just by leaning on it, and they're the same, they don't know any better.
Mhm.
These animals don't know any better, they just are running around bumping into things, but it is certainly worth it. I would not trade not having Levi for, I don't know, less fur on the ground. I can sweep. I bought a broom.
I appreciate everything you're saying. And we both know, and just in case our listeners don't know this, that it is illegal to have any type of stipulation around children. All housing is child friendly. So, what we're essentially speaking to here is that it is legal for landlords to place parameters and restrictions around pets. And yet, the concerns around pets are very often not founded in research and or the realities of having an animal. And I absolutely agree with your points in terms of the spills we have, the damage we cause, right? That's absolutely been my experience. I'm the one that has damaged the floor or spilled something, not my animals. When it comes to a couple things that pet parents can do proactively, to the point around spillage, I have a cat that loves to knock water all over the place. Having some trays or essentially some type of mat to protect the floor from water, just like we would in a kitchen or a bathroom, in the same way we protect against water damage for our own behaviors, can go a long way. We also learned during the pandemic that many of us bought HEPA filters. We'll often get the question about allergies and allergens, whether it's someone living in a pet friendly building that needs to manage allergies or navigating the question around bringing an animal into the home for foster or a forever adoption, and how to manage that. HEPA filters can go a long way as well. And even thinking about having multiple in the home to help filter those allergens is a pretty cost effective solution. I think many of us were using, whether we bought them or they were provided in our work environments, right, throughout the pandemic, so used to that approach by now. But if you're not, just do a quick search for HEPA and you'll see some good options there too. I definitely appreciate you sharing that and absolutely agree that this needs to be a priority. And as someone who is a landlord, I really hope that others in this position are having a chance to reflect on this and certainly reach out to us if you'd like to discuss your direct situation. But would love to see more availability from a landlord perspective to help support pet parents.
Mhm.
I want to switch gears a little bit because you mentioned something earlier on that I have seen in some of your posts, which is your openness about your journey with sobriety. And I find that very admirable. I think you gave a nod to this in your reference to Levi showing up at a liquor store for listeners that are just joining. Could you share some insights into your sobriety journey and how this has shaped you?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been sober now for 9 years. Sobriety date September 1st, 2014. And my soon to be spouse is also sober right about the same time. We met in the program at a friend's house at an event, and things have been all uphill for us since then. At least for me, I don't know. I'm certain he would say the same, but I don't want to speak on his behalf. But yeah, I got sober because I needed to. Life wasn't going as well as I'd like it. And so if anybody out there is struggling, you are welcome to reach out to me about that as well. And I can assure you the life that I have now is beyond what I've ever imagined I could have in life. And whether that be from having low self-esteem or just no value for myself, like I never felt good about me as an adult. And whatever traumas we all got something, so whatever traumas I had, I my life has just improved so much more than just now having confidence. Like coming into the program and I'm a member and you come in, you face all your fears, you work a spiritual program. I would not have thought it would just be this great. Immediately started feeling better about myself, worked through some things to get more confidence, started taking risks in my career that I felt were backed by a higher power. And now I just look back and I'm like, oh, I've surpassed every goal that I ever set for myself. And I continue to. So I am very grateful to have been given the opportunity to come around the rooms and the people, and for those people to show me all the love, kindness, and grace that they did. And here we are 9 years later, living and loving life.
It's amazing. When you think about the experiences you've had, both in terms of dog fostering and maintaining sobriety, navigating your sobriety journey, as well as your work in real estate, how do you see these things coming together? How do they intersect?
Oh, I certainly wouldn't be doing real estate had I not gotten sober. Had I not gotten sober, I probably just continue have been a waitress for as long as I could before maybe I was sure I was on the verge of being fired at some point or several points. Who knows? I was drunk. But I would say that getting my life together is the only way that I've been able to identify a career that I choose. It's the only way that I've been able to identify a lifestyle that I want and then go after it. And so that's how I'm here now. I also had, like I said previously, I've always loved animals, but at the time I was out before I got sober, I had no care for me. So I guarantee you I had no care for anything else. Not that I would try go out of my way to hurt an animal, but I certainly wouldn't go out of my way to help anyone or anything. So coming around full circle type of moment, getting the opportunity to go back and volunteer at a shelter for something that I've wanted to do. Like I've always wanted to figure out a way to be involved, and getting that opportunity to volunteer at the shelter and them welcoming me as well has been wonderful. And it would not be were I not sober. And yes, I alluded to that because the funny thing is, so Ethan and I both being sober, the fact that Levi would go to a liquor store and that's where he is found is just, of course he was at the liquor store because his place is a prison. There's nothing here for him. And he was just out. We had a lot of good laughs after the fact because in the moment it was very scary. And yeah, and then these are things that I can laugh about now. I would certainly wouldn't have been laughing about them some years ago. But now looking back on the ridiculousness that I thought life had to offer, like the low bottom way I thought that this is just the way it is because these are the cards I've been dealt or whatever it was. I look back on that and I'm just like, wow, can't believe I really must have not liked me if I thought this was all I was gonna get. And by this I just mean a a job just barely making it, had an apartment, just barely able to afford it, and now we have a great life together. We travel, we have a house, like, we can afford what we want.
Thank you so much for sharing all of that. I want to highlight a few things that you mentioned, and certainly some things that resonate with me as someone who has also been sober for several years. I'm not sure the exact date. And please correct me if I'm mischaracterizing anything. But what I'm hearing you say is number one, we have to be able to take care of ourselves. And it's only when we're taking care of ourselves that we can then extend that circle of compassion to others. So we have to start with, well, what we need in supporting ourselves, and that you look back and see how you weren't necessarily doing that before your sobriety journey. And that through your sobriety journey, you began to prioritize yourself. You were able to navigate what you wanted for yourself in your life. You were able to find a partner and build a life together, and you support one another in maintaining that sobriety and in all other facets of your lives, personally and professionally, including bringing Levi into your life as well. Am I characterizing that fairly?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I appreciate what you're saying in terms of being able to look back on things with a different lens now, having navigated through that process, and certainly having a community to support you and that you found benefit in the program. Any specific strategies or support systems that you found to be particularly helpful as you've navigated your journey, as well as balancing your passions?
I think it develops itself. I go to meetings, and most of my friends are also sober people and go to meetings as well. So my social group grew out of that. It would not be hard for me to be around people who drink because I'm around it regularly, I would say. It just is a bit more fun when I'm hanging out with the people that are sober and I want to spend time with, I guess. There's not really any strategies. Just if you have problems, turn them over to your higher power. And this is a higher power of whatever of your choosing. So know if you have grown up in a very religious household and that's not something you jive with, you don't have to. I got to choose mine and am very pleased daily with how I can turn a problem over and things will work out. When I'm doing my best thinking, when I'm trying to control my life in the way that I think it should go, things don't work out. I did that for many years before, and I just kept winding up drunk. So the life that I live now is just we have activities that we all get to do together. And I'm saying like myself, Ethan, our friend group, the meetings again are very important. That's a good system there. And then if anyone comes to me seeking advice or conversation around that, I'm more than willing to share it because it was so freely given to me. When I came in the rooms and hated everything about me and was so angry with the world, the people were like, "Yeah, no, we get that. Yeah, oh, yeah, for sure. Just keep coming back and maybe pick up this book and read a couple stories." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, whatever." But they were happy and they were laughing, and I was like, "I don't remember the last time I laughed." Okay, they said it would work. I'll try it. And I was very stubborn then too, but I stuck around and now I get to laugh. And if someone were to come to me and ask me, how do they do it? I'd be happy to talk about that. I cannot tell you what to do. The, the program is comprised of a series of suggestions and recommendations, and that will be what I offer. That and a ear of understanding. There's rarely anything that anyone's told me that I've just been like shocked. You did what? And the same. The things that I've shared with my sponsor and my friends, no one's ever just been blown away. We get it. There's a difference between talking to people who are working this like spiritual program and like you trying to tell them like the things that you've done and you think it's going to be so crazy. They get it. In those rooms, I feel so understood and so understanding of others. So I would say that being open minded, 100%, because you don't know any of these people and you're in a group of people that would not normally mix. So you have to be very open minded and just hold out hope that life can be better. Mine is, and I will only speak for mine, but mine is so much better than I ever thought I had the opportunity to have.
That's so powerful. Thank you. and in keeping track of the things we've talked about and some of the time frames that you've mentioned. You mentioned becoming vegetarian about 9 years ago. You
Mhm.
mentioned your fitness journey. I'm hearing you talk about the importance of spirituality or faith, finding a higher power, and I appreciate that you mentioned that can look differently for different people, right? And we need to navigate that as best we see fit. And it also sounds like some of these other elements to how you care for yourself, how you take care of yourself and your partner, at least aligned in timing. Do you see those as related in terms of your journey?
In timing, I don't know. I guess things just come when they're supposed to come,
Mhm,
and you can't rush it. I would do your best as I do. I do my best to be in the moment, live in the moment, and enjoy the right now.
mhm.
Would I like my future to be amazing and carefree? But I'm not after chasing a monetary goal so that because if I am, then I'm always looking to what's the next thing? What's the next thing? What am I gonna do? And that I've been there. 'Cause and you go through phases like that just being a human in this world. You if you spend enough time on social media, you will feel that you have to wake up at 4, maybe meditate, but also listen to an audiobook on 2.7 speed, learn how to drop ship at some point, and do, like, maybe do all of that before 6, then work out. There's just a lot, like, that we're getting these streams of information all the time of you're not doing enough. And if I operate in that and sometimes my mind will go there, then I will feel like I'm not doing enough, which will then lead to I'm not enough and I'll never be enough. And why am I even trying? And just demise, just, oh, it's all crashing down. So I try to be in the moment, enjoy the moment. Right now, I'm enjoying doing this podcast. It's been wonderful having this conversation. I thought of some things that I haven't thought about in a while. And that's good right now. And I know that I have tasks to complete for today, and then I get to hang out with friends in the evening. And I'm just like in the moment, like now is podcast. And when I'm doing the tasks, hey, now I'm doing tasks. Try your I would just advise try your best to do that. You'll be 40 before you know it if you keep looking into the future. And you still won't be where you want to be. You'll still be chasing something that somebody has and you don't. So try to stay here, enjoy you, enjoy life, and whatever that looks like for you. And if you're not, make a change to get there.
Powerful advice. How has your involvement in animal welfare and pet adoption supported you in that journey? How has that come together at all when we think about your journey with sobriety, with self care, with tapping into a higher power?
It's just another way for me to give back.
Mhm.
It's another way for me to say, thank you for all universe for all that you've done. And now I can go out and help. Like I said, when Ethan was asking, could we keep Levi? It's not like we can't. We can adjust our lives so that this one dog doesn't have to go back to the shelter. And if I can, why don't I? My life is so nice to just share the love, spread it all around. And we spread it over to Levi. I'm sure he's enjoying it. I took him for a car ride the other day, and you guys, I am very adamant about things being clean a certain way, which was another reason I was so nervous because dogs have fur and it comes off of them. But I've gotten over it. Houses are houses, you have to live in them. It can't be spick and span all the time unless you decide to live alone and be alone forever. But I took him for a car ride, I put the seat cover on the back seat and let the windows down. You would have thought he had never lived until that moment. I don't know if anybody, because he's 5, so if someone owned him before. He's pretty well trained too, so they spent time with that. I don't know if they took him out in the car, maybe it's been a while, but he was so happy, just could not handle how happy he was. And I feel great that all it was I had to swallow a little bit of fear about the seats being furry and put a cover over it. And now my life is grand. Thanks, lady.
I love that. And I really appreciate that at so many points in this conversation, you've talked about the absolute importance of maintaining an open mind and putting your animal's needs first or putting broader animals' needs first, and recognizing that the things that we can get hung up on are so small and easily managed. And for those listening, I may not have said this as directly as I wanted to earlier because I was focused on responding to the important insights you were sharing, but I do rent out a property and I've done that for some time. And I've had several tenants over the past several years that have had one or more than one animal. And when I first started that process, that wasn't the case. And I've learned over time that not only are animals at the core of where I find meaning and purpose and the reasons I get up in the morning. And so there is meaning in creating that space and that housing availability. And but also the things that can seem daunting, whether we're talking about volunteering with an organization, whether we're thinking about bringing another animal into our lives, whether we're thinking about introducing an animal to a new animal, whether it's fostering or full-time adoption. These things can be managed. They require some planning, as you mentioned, and they may require some cleanup, but buying a little more powerful vacuum, I think, is something many of us can take on, right? Buying a allergy HEPA filter or simply recognizing that, as you mentioned, we're gonna have a little more hair to manage, but in the grand scheme, we're doing something that's really beneficial to us, that's tremendously beneficial to that animal, and that when it comes to some of these broader concerns for the community, are creating tremendous benefit for people and animals more broadly. So really appreciate you mentioning that and have certainly lived that and experienced that as well. And it's so powerful to think about your examples of how having an open mind has helped you build a life that you love with a partner that you love and a dog that you love. So thank you so much for sharing all of that.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity to go through all this together.
Absolutely. I've loved this conversation.
Uh,
Uh, for those that would like to follow similar paths, any other advice you would share?
what would I share? I think do some self reflection. Are you happy where you are? And happy is relative to who you are as well. Are you pleased with life? And if not, what can you do differently? To what can you, like, even if it's just a little thing, what can you start today to do differently? And do it. Just get up and do it. And I'm not asking you to get up at 4 in the morning and do all the things I mentioned before. Be realistic within your day. What can you do? Maybe don't scroll on social media. It can be traumatic, but that would be my advice is sit back, do a little self-reflection. Are you where you want to be? If not, what's one thing? Tell me one thing today you can do and do it.
Very powerful. Absolutely. Where can listeners go to learn more about you and your work and opportunities to connect?
You can find me on Instagram. My tag is at bbknows_realtor. And I have a Facebook page. You could probably search Brandy Baker and look for the blonde girl. I'll be there. Just friend me. I accept almost all requests as long as it's not creepy. And if you guys want to volunteer or if you're looking for a dog, visit the I Heart Dogs website. It's iheartdogs.org. And this is the one in Warren that I volunteer at. They have so many, particularly this dog named Willa. Her name is Willa. She's so sweet, but she doesn't get along with other dogs and she's been in there forever. Please, someone adopt her. She's very strong. So if you are looking for a powerful protector, Willa has got your back.
I love that. Thank you. And I just recently went through the application process for your organization and can attest that it is detailed and can be completed in a short amount of time. But the questions I think are really intended to help make sure that the animal that you're applying to care for, whether it's foster or adoption, has its needs cared for. So it's great to see that the details you're mentioning about Willa are available for Willa and any animal on the website in terms of their needs, both from a people perspective and an animal perspective. And it sounds like if anyone has any questions, that the team is available to chat about that and help to navigate the process
Definitely.
throughout. Yeah, to make sure there's a good match for everybody involved.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Brandy. I've so enjoyed this conversation, and I'm excited to see what thoughts and reactions we get. For those listening, please feel free to reach out with any questions. We would love to connect with you and look forward to hearing your comments.
Thank you, Erin.
Thanks, Brandy. Thanks so much for joining this episode of the Compassionate and Beneficial Living podcast. Please follow, subscribe, share your comments, share with others, and let us know what topics you'd like to hear covered next.